My name's Tim. I'm the Assistant District Superintendent here in the Ohio River Valley. And we have seen the need to do a presentation and put some focus into this area of SBG, single board governance, or some folks call it servant board of leaders. A lot of different names out there, but it's an alternative leadership structure. I've often said that with the small churches, we've been doing this for years, kind of out of necessity. So we kind of have an understanding of how it works. But hopefully today we're going to be giving you a little bit more insight and some ideas on how to modify your structure to be more efficient. You should have some handouts, and you can take a look at those. Those hopefully will be in your folder. Yes, thank you. Those are some things that we'll refer to perhaps from time to time. We do want to do some introductions here as we begin, and the way we've decided our format here is we have three churches that are in varying degrees of moving to a leadership structure. In some cases they've already done it, and so we're going to, as a panel, is up here. You're going to be able to ask questions later. They're going to kind of tell you their story. I would encourage you to let them kind of move through the time and take notes with your questions. And then when we get to the question and answer session, then you'll have time to, because chances are they're going to answer your question as you move forward. And so if you kind of hold off until we get through that area. Jim here is going to be our timekeeper to help us keep on time and moving through our session. This is Thomas Hargis over here, and he's going to be helping do the audio-visual. And we're going to start here with Roland Moore, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves, the church that they're serving, and just folks that they have with them. So,
all right. Roland Moore, as he said, I'm pastor of Calvary Hilltop United Methodist Church. We're located in North College Hill. This is Etta Hampton. She is the chair of our lead team. That's what we call it.
Excellent. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nicole Henderson-Johns. I am the pastor of Batavia Faith. We are out east of Cincinnati. And with me, I have Larry Vaughn, who is our board director.
I'm Ann Myers. I pastor at Hope United Methodist Church, which is east of Middletown, Ohio. And I have with me our leadership team leader, Tom Garrett.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Outstanding. So we're talking about leadership. We're talking about a modified leadership structure. And this is an alternative configuration to overseeing and operating the local church in order to increase the quality and shared commitments of ministry. And single board governance focuses on governing the operation and programs of the church as designated by the Church Conference, which is the ultimate governing body of any local United Methodist Church. One thing you're going to probably take note of as you work into this type of structure is it's a little bit different from representative oversight to governing oversight. Where in representative ministry you have representatives that come and they represent different groups in the church. Your worship team, your United Methodist Women, all the different groups that you have. Here we're talking more about governance, where you have a team of people that focus on the overall governing of the church. It doesn't mean that they initiate and begin every ministry, even approve everything. But this is just a different structure. It's a way of maybe being more efficient. Some people have often said we're doing this so we don't have as many meetings. Ultimately, every church wants to make an impact in their world, and that's the key word today. Churches, even in the business community, businesses talk about what impact are we having. And so if you think about your church, what impact are you making in your community? If your church was going tomorrow, would people in the community know it? Would they realize you weren't there? So churches want to make an impact, and by moving to a different modified leadership structure, you can stay, I think for a lot of people it helps them to stay on task. We all have the same mission to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world, but the vision and the way you carry that out is different for every particular local church, the context of ministry in which you find yourself. We're going to begin by showing a video. Thomas is going to show a video of Bob Hyland, who is a member of Westwood United Methodist Church and also happens to be an attorney who we consult here in the district from time to time. And he has prepared an 8-minute video, something that maybe you might not have thought about, but all the different kinds of responsibilities and the legal ramifications that are before you when you go to a different modified structure. So Thomas, let's take a look at this video.
Hi, I am Bob Hyland.
What is your current church leadership structure and how did you get there? And this time maybe we'll start down with Ann at the end and Hope.
Am I on the timer? Our leadership structure came about as whoever was on the current council or board of administration just automatically trans over to the modified leadership structure or our leadership team. So our leadership team consists of more than what is required according to what Bob had just shared. So we have the team leader or the chairperson, we have a finance PPRC, we have a treasurer secretary, a lay leader, a lay member to annual conference, which we don't have, and in the past a lot of times we had the lay leader was the lay member to annual conference, which also would make your team a little smaller. We have a daycare in our church, which is a ministry of the church, so we have the daycare director is on ours. Trustee, we have worship, membership, we have a secretary, we have outreach, and a member at large is what we have on our leadership team at this time. And as I said, the way they became about is they just kind of transcended over. At the end of the year, when you do the pastor review, we take volunteers, if you would, out of that committee to be like a subcommittee, fill out those forms, the numbers 1 through 5. You all know what I'm talking about, that your PPR people fill out. And then they bring that back to the whole group and then review it then as well. And the same thing with your budget at the end of the year. The finance chair will get 4 or 5 people from this list to look at the budget, present the budget then at the meeting for everybody to go over. Instead of all 12 of us doing it, they just do some subcommittees to do it and then talk about it at that time. Do you have anything?
Some of us wear multiple hats, but we're making it work.
Great. What about Nicole? What is your current church leadership structure and how did you get there?
So right now, actually tomorrow, we will be voting the new leaders into place in a charge conference because of some taking a little bit of time to make sure we had it right and had everybody in the right places. The big thing for us was that the new structure is spiritual gifts based. So we have several different directors in our board: hospitality, worship, discipleship, youth ministries, mission and service, finance, trustees, congregational care, and communications, along with some officer positions of a lay leader or chair, a vice chair, who is also our SPRC or PPRC director, secretary, and a lay delegate. But all of our directors have been chosen based on spiritual gifts and the needs of our congregation. So we've gone about it to make sure that the needs of our congregation are met. and are taken care of, as well as making sure that the people who are in the places really actually like to do the thing that they're going to be doing. Because I've found that if you put a square peg in a round hole, it just doesn't fit, does it? So making sure that folks are interested, excited, and engaged in what they will be leading. And Larry, I don't know if you want to share a little more about why we headed this direction?
Yeah, I can get into that. As Pastor Nicole said, we are in transition right now, and tomorrow will be a good day, we think.
Better be. I don't have a plan B.
Yeah.
We've gone from plan A to plan B to plan C already.
Oh, yeah, we have.
But to try to summarize, I guess, why we did this, we had to look at our individual situation. We're a congregation that is relatively small in number. I'm one of the younger members of the congregation, so you get an idea of what our congregation is like. We thought that this, and we still think that this would be a step forward, looking toward the future. It is an efficient model. It is a model that lets us focus on what our church is really about, focusing on ministry, focusing on congregational care, focusing on youth ministry. So that is basically, why we're doing it. We have a present system that I feel did not really focus on that ministry. It was a system of meeting and reporting and reading the minutes of the previous month and going home. So this, I know, is going to be a step forward, because our focus is ministry, discipleship, reaching out to others. And this will help bring those leaders that will be responsible for those individual areas. And we'll make use of, we have people in the church who have dedicated years and years and years to different areas of ministry. We can make use of those people, and we can also develop new leaders, because we are going to have to revitalize the church. I'm 72, let's see, 72. I'm one of the younger members. We have a few members well over 90 years old, and we need young people, and we're getting young people, thanks to.
We are working on, not just me, we are working on.
I just put it out.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. That's very helpful. Now, how about Calvary Hilltop? Could you talk to us about your current leadership structure and how you got there?
Our current leadership structure is a modified structure, but we have been modifying it as we have gone or come along. We have 9 people who are on the what we call a lead team. We have basically modified the individual committees out of being individual committees, and our hope is that all of our planning will take place around this or through this lead team. There are some one-time type activities, and for that, what we do is we recruit people who are interested in those areas or have gifts in those areas to do planning for that, but the ending result of everything comes through the lead team. We have just in this month just voted to include the trustees into the lead teams, so that we don't have a separate board of trustees. The lead team becomes the board of trustees. Part of the reason for that is that in order for the trustees to do their work, there must be a majority of the sitting trustees. We had challenges having a majority of the sitting trustees. That's based upon the discipline. And so then what we've done is we've taken, we've got a person that we're going to call the building superintendent, who is the chair of the trustees, and that person becomes a part of that. So then the lead team are the trustees, they are the personnel or pastor parish, staff parish relations committee. part of what brought us into this was that as we met in different committees or ministry teams, it was basically the same people who were meeting all the time, several times during the month. And we came together, we talked about the same things in every one of those settings, because the same thing is going through everybody's mind. You know, we're in this committee, we're in this committee, and so we overlapped and never really was able to focus in on each ministry area the way that we needed to and the planning that we needed to. And so that was one of the reasons to go to this, to make it a little easier for us to do planning for activities and planning for the future, so that we can take the next faithful step in the life of the church and in the connection with the community.
Good responses, appreciate that. Now let's look at question 2. How do you make a modified leadership structure work in your church? So how do you make this new leadership structure actually work? And maybe Roland, let's start with you this time in Calvary Hilltop. How does it actually get lived out on a monthly, weekly basis?
We make sure that we have an agenda to follow through with the ministry areas that we have in the church, and as they are planning, and then we will just determine what and do the planning right there. Such as we're in the process of still working on the budget for 2016. That's been a challenge, but the treasurer basically does the work, and then we put it together. The whole body then will determine what it is. As it relates to the evaluation for staff, we ask each member or give each member a copy of whatever the survey would be. Yes, they would respond it, then we bring it together and then merge it together so that there'll be one. And so basically the planning and everything happens right there at that table at that time. Now, our desire is to meet once a month, but there may be occasions based upon the season of the year and the activities that we're planning that we may need to meet more often. And so we can do that, and so that we cover all of the ministry areas that we are connected with.
Okay.
And I would say, because this is a new structure, we're still modifying it as we go. So we're doing that, and not only are we modifying this, but we are a newly merged church, so we had those challenges also. But it has, so far it's working. It's working.
So you're staying responsive as needs change, as you move forward. You're not locked in, but you're understanding that things could be altered even more.
Yes, trying to stay as fluid as possible, not fixed in stone or engraved in stone, so that we can have that flexibility to move as situations or occasions or needs may call for.
Okay.
And the meetings are open to the whole congregation. Persons can come as they would like to. However, when we deal with staff situations, then we ask others to excuse themselves. It's not always with a smile, but it happens.
How do you envision it working?
I think for one, I can also say that this is the second time that I have worked on implementing the structure in a small church. I worked on it with my first appointment, and they are still, to the best of my knowledge, running with it. And it looked totally different with that group of folks. It was a smaller congregation. We had fewer members on the board. We had a different meeting style. It was completely different than what the picture is for this. Same basic template, but a little bit different wording, some different terminology, and some different needs of the different congregations. So I wanted to make sure that everybody realizes that what we're saying up here could work for you, but you need to make it yours. You need to take ownership of it and make it what is going to work best for you. Our board will be meeting once a month. They will be making the decisions of the church and leading the way, really. I think the best way of explaining it is that they are the leaders. They're really the ones who are going forward and pushing forward and working towards what's the next step and following our vision and fulfilling our mission. We have it set up so that we do not meet in December because everybody has a Christmas break. We also have it set up so that the person who is in charge of finance, our finance director, has control of about a half an hour section of the meeting 4 times a year, and the SPRC chair, or the vice chair of our board, has control of the meeting for about a half an hour 4 times a year to fulfill the responsibilities of those 2 areas of ministry. Our meetings are set up with prayer and devotion to start, and then leadership training in the meeting. We actually are going to be spending 20 minutes to a half an hour on leadership training and development, because I really believe that if we as the leaders of the church aren't willing to learn and grow and keep invested in what's happening now, then how can we expect anybody else to want to do that? So we are going to be leading by example, and then we'll be doing a type of sharing where it's not reporting based. It is sharing, my ministry is good, my ministry is okay, my ministry's in trouble. And after we go around and all the 13 folks on the board say where their ministry is, we go back and focus on the folks that say, my ministry is in trouble, we're sinking, we need help here. We're going to focus on those things. Where the ministries are good, we're not going to spend a lot of time on that. That's what the newsletter's for. Reporting out the good things, that's what the newsletter's for, so that the whole congregation can share that. And then we will, of course, end in a closing prayer. So that's kind of our structure. Any things to add, Larry?
I want to add one thing. Being a former English teacher, I know he's speaking of the present, she's speaking of the future, so I'll speak a little bit about the past. If you are interested in making this change in your church, I would advise that you don't make the change and say this is the way it's going to be. It doesn't work that way. We have gone through an introduction to our congregation. We've gone through orientations to our congregation, and in the early stages you will feel those who are not exactly happy about what you're doing. So you have to, I think, do what we did. We had several meetings where we had question and answers. We had demonstrations of what it would be like. And it brought about changes. The first model that she introduced is not the model that we have now. It's been altered, and it's been altered to fit the needs of the congregation and the church. You will run into those who have been in the congregation for many, many years, and they have traditional roles in the church, and they don't want to see those roles infringed upon. You have members of your congregation who have egos. We all have an ego, but sometimes those egos get in the way of what their call actually is. I don't have an ego, do I?
No.
The time limit, I'm finished, thank you. She's sitting here.
We'll let the people with the egos at home.
As an English teacher, I do get carried away sometimes, and I did go over the time in my classes occasionally.
You're fine. Thank you so much. How about Hope? Maybe you all could share a little bit here about this question.
We have been in the modified leadership structure for about a year. We did not bring it before the church as they did. I personally brought it before the council, and for the reason that you heard mentioned, many of us are on the same committee and we're meeting 2 to 3 times a month. The thought was, why don't we just go to the one? But, so we're still working through this. We're still trying to understand it, and those are answers for the other 2 questions that we have. But ideally, we like to have the people that are in the lead of their committee to have their information that they want to discuss given to Tom and I at least a week in advance. Right now, the only thing that we're getting is the treasurer's report. And I'm not sure if everybody's looking at it, but again, that's part of the other 3 and 4 question.
Yeah.
So ideally, that's the idea, is to have that. And then when we get to each chairperson, as Tom mentioned, we're changing hats and we become part of the worship committee or part of the trustee, or we are now, or not part of it, we are the trustee, or now we're the PPR committee. So each person, and that's, you know, that's how we're doing it. But ideally, it's to come prepared so that the meeting, you know, ideally you like to have an hour and a half with some training in there. We do have opening devotions, and then we have prayer at the end as well.
And I will tell you, when Ann first presented it to me, I approached it with an open mind. And had I probably not approached it with an open mind, I'm not so sure some of the committee members would have approached it with an open mind. And we realized very quickly that yes, we're all wearing multiple hats. Some of us were there for 4.5 hours some nights, going through 3-4 committees. And while ideally we'd like to be at 90 minutes, we're probably more like 2 right at the moment. Our goal is to shrink that if we can start getting there. But it's becoming effective. It's still a work in progress. It will always be a work in progress. I would not tell any of you that once you establish it, it will be that way forever. You have to adapt and modify. And so it will always be a work in progress, but it can be an effective work in progress.
Very good. Looking at your charge conference tomorrow, and getting ready to start this. And so let's think of this third question here. And perhaps at this time you're just kind of envisioning what you know, the challenges might be, but what does a modified leadership structure, how's it going to make it harder at your church? What are the challenges going to be, you think?
So I think most of the challenges that we've met several challenges already. That's not how we've done it before.
Yeah.
You've never heard that before, ever, right? That's not how we do things. No, it looks different. It's change. Those have been the biggest challenges for us so far, and I think going forward, just continuing to make sure that we don't slide back into what's familiar and what's comfortable, and keep going forward and keep trying this new thing and fixing this new thing until it works right for us. I think a lot of folks have been very concerned about their voice and their vote. We went from a 36 leadership positions that were voted on in the church to 13. And the biggest question that folks had was, well, how come those 13 people are going to get to, they're the only people who get to vote on anything? Well, number one, we're not a congregational system, which a lot of people, it seems we've had that issue a couple times. We aren't a congregational system. We're an administrative system in the United Methodist Church. We choose people to make the decisions for us. And that's hard for some folks to swallow a little bit. But also the concept that it's not really about vote, it's about ministry. Like, where are we doing, where are we acting, where are we being the hands and feet of Christ, and kind of trying to navigate that bridge, go over that bridge, and stay on the right side of the bridge. At least what I think is the right side of the bridge. But and also, because I was the person who was presenting this, I started this process in presenting this new structure to my folks within a year of being there. Actually 6 months. I think I was there for about 6 months before we started this conversation. So it was very much the concern that, well, this is going to give the pastor all the authority, and that nobody else is going to have any. This is the pastor's thing, and the pastor's going to pick the people, and the pastor's going to have it, and she's going to have all the control. And we've spent a lot of time trying to convince people otherwise, and trying to explain that it's a multiplicity concept where I pour my knowledge about leadership into other people, they pour it into other people, and we empower one another and grow everyone as a whole. Anything to add to that?
No.
Yeah, I won't let him talk, so you know.
You got the power.
I know. All right, I'll take it.
No, I have nothing to add.
Yeah, right. And you're gonna
And
have
he's one of
less
the
tomorrow.
Thank you very much. Now, Roland, you've been doing this for a while, so maybe you could speak to that question with some experience now. How does the leadership structure that you have now make it harder at your church, or challenging?
I don't think it makes it more challenging. I think for us, it has made it easier. Because we don't have so many different committees and different people making decisions. It's more, everything comes more or less under the same umbrella.
So you really haven't had any obstacles or any of these questions like Nicole faced where we've always done it this way, or the feeling of maybe people are losing power, decision making?
You know, for one thing, we have such a small congregation, and as someone else mentioned, we have an older congregation. So therefore, you don't have as many people that are challenging things or feel that they are able to have, I'm not going to say input, but feel that they are physically able even to do a lot of things. So therefore, you don't have that kind of dissension. And so for us, I think it has made it easier. Because of the fewer number of meetings, and then fewer, I think with anything, the fewer people you have making decisions, that makes it easier.
It's not so much harder on the church as it is on the leadership team itself. And by that I mean having everyone on the team understand that they are a part of all the committees, that they are a part of that committee. And that has to do with the training. And so I haven't done enough training to get them to understand that. Some people have never been on trustees or PPRC, so they have no idea what that means when they're on that committee. So that falls on me to get some training done for that. So that's one of the hard things. Keeping it to 2 hours or an hour and a half has been difficult at this time. Not falling back into the old way when it was a administrative board is difficult as well. So those are some of the challenges that we have. If we can, start tweaking those and getting that worked out, I can see us having more time to spend on doing the mission and ministries of the church, and spending a whole lot more time on that, and not as much time on the business end of the church.
I think one of the things that chairpersons get in tune to is they're working in a silo. The trustees are worried about trustee things. Staff parish is just worried about staff. And we've had to say, wait a minute, you are now part of a bigger group. So we've got to get them out of the silo thinking, and it's a work in progress, as I stated. Ann and I are trying. As the leadership chair, I need to be a little more forceful in time management so we keep on task and on focus. And again, that's a work in progress.
Okay. All right. Very, very good. All right. Well, our next question here, and you all kind of indicated you found it somewhat easier. So the question goes right in, what does a modified leadership structure, how does it make it easier for Calvary Hilltop? How has it been easier in this new structure, the way you do things? less meetings, I'm assuming. What else could you share about that?
Aside from fewer meetings, having fewer meetings gives you an opportunity to do other things. So that every time the door of the church opens, the same person is not there all of the time. We're looking to, even though we've been doing it for a while, we're still growing into it. That with whatever ministry that we determine that we're going to do or how we're going to serve, we have the opportunity to pull people from the congregation for short-term work and not long-term, where somebody gets locked into a place and that's where they are until the point where they're physically unable or mentally unable to fulfill that. And then other people don't want to come behind them because, well, brother so-and-so has had this for so long, I could never follow in his or in her foot shoes. So it makes it easier in that aspect. And being fluid, being able to flow with what the needs are. We're still in the process of learning. So it's still in the process, but it does make life a little bit easier.
Okay.
A lot easier.
Outstanding.
So,
Yeah.
and the other thing is that everybody around the table doesn't have to feel guilty about not having a report or their ministry team not having met and having to deal with the emotions around that. So that makes it helpful and doesn't single out individuals as much as it had before.
I agree with that, especially putting so much pressure on individuals to do things simply because it is a small group of people that we have to draw from. So it's making it a lot easier.
Yeah, and just to say this because we're small, about a third of the congregation serves on the lead team. So of those who participate. So we've got a broad cross section of the congregation that is serving. So each grouping of folks can hear, because each grouping of folks just ask certain ones, well, what are we doing? What's going on? So.
And I'll add to that too, the ones that don't participate as much because they are older and they have all in the past been very active within the church. So they don't feel left out, at least that's my thinking. They're not feeling left out because like some of them don't drive at night, so they know that they can't attend meetings in the evenings. And some of them just have told us they don't want to do it anymore. So therefore, you're not having any hurt feelings because they're not serving in that capacity.
There may be some hurt feelings, but not as much as there had been.
Hope, I was intrigued by your description painting the picture of the silo. And I think we all can relate to how sometimes we get compartmentalized and also. What else can you share about how this new structure has made it easier for the congregation?
Well, a couple of things. One, the congregation, and we're not totally dissimilar in the fact that we have an aging congregation, we have a small number congregation. The members of the leadership team are a significant number of the congregation, but the congregation now knows all the leadership team. We have our pictures up when we take our oath. They recognize us, and as the leadership team, we all know what's going on because we've discussed it as the group. So if the trustees are getting ready to replace the furnaces, it's not just held up in the trustees and the whole committee knows. So if somebody comes up and says, hey, I hear we're replacing the furnaces, we can answer that right away. You don't have to refer those people to the trustee chair, or you have to well, you need to go to the trustee meeting, or as usually happens, they go running to Ann's office and ask, what's going on. So I think from that standpoint, it's made it easier for the congregation because there are a few more people that are engaged in the decision making. We've not experienced the holy cow, that group has all the power. Thankfully, we've not had that issue pop up. We didn't hit the resistance to change from the congregation because, to be honest with you, it relieved some of the congregation from being on committees. You can only ask the retirees so many times to be on the trustees before they go, no mas. So now when we have a project, we can reach out and say, can you help us? And we get a little bit more willingness from that aspect. So
Great.
It's broken down to silos. It's gotten more people in the know, and we've been able to free up a few people from some obligations so that when you do ask, you do get a little bit more participation.
One of the, as stated before, you're down to one meeting a month, hopefully, and your time, you have to really manage your time. And that's what I want to stress is what Nicole had already said, is that you want to spend a smaller amount of time on the business end and more time on your ministries and your missions and focusing on how you're going to do the outreach. And that's what it should be more about. Instead of staying within the church, we need to be going out. So that should be a larger part of your meeting. And then of course there's a learning piece in there as you continue to modify this leadership training, this leadership structure. So there should be a training piece in there as well. And that's time management, as Tom has mentioned, as to how you set that up.
All right. Now, looking at tomorrow, what do you think after tomorrow?
Listing
How's
on
it going to
both
be
sides
easy?
here, anything I say is going to be repetitive, but just a couple of points. The committee issue. I've served on worship, pastor, parish, trustees. What else do we have?
Now,
I've been on
Everything.
Been every committee, and like someone said, pastor parish meets and the worship meets. You're talking about the same thing. This does eliminate those committee meetings, and it does cut down on the amount of time and let you focus on the area that you need to focus on. And he had mentioned the fact that you're now bringing, say, 12 directors in, and the 12 directors have to be responsible for the total picture. I think that's an asset, because those 12 directors will know what's happening in every area within the church, because it is important that they do know. My background is education administration as a superintendent and later board member. I had a board of directors, elementary principal, secondary principal, curriculum director, and so on, so on, so on. And I, as superintendent, had to know everything that was going on within the district. So this will give them the opportunity to work in different areas and understand exactly where the church is going.
remember I said something about gifts-based ministry? There's a reason he's sitting here. He knows what he's doing. And I think
You're the boss.
you are going to give me trouble. But I think, all kidding aside, the biggest bonus and the biggest thing that makes easier is that this new structure, at least for us, maximizes congregational involvement. We all know how difficult it is to get someone to commit to a 3-year term on anything, even if it's their passion area. I keep encouraging our directors as they're saying yes to commit to this 1-year term, because we are treating it very much, each person on the board is going to be in a 1-year term. At the end of that year, it's just like a pastor. At the end of every year, us pastors, we go and we talk with our district superintendent. Is this still the place for you? Are you still called to be serving this place? I will be asking, and Larry will be asking all of our directors at the end of the year, is this still the place for you? Are you still here? Are you still wanting to be here? Is there something you want to do more? Is there something you want to do less? But included in that is that each of them have the opportunity to say, all right, I have a Mother's Day project that we're going to do, and it's going to take 4 weeks to get this plan together, and I need 10 people to help me. They can go and they can grab those 10 people and have a short-term task force to do a ministry project, and those 10 people can get involved really deep into that project without having to commit to the 3-year death sentence, so to speak. So it's encouraging more people to get more involved in different areas of ministry and try more things. Because the director of youth ministries may come up to you and say, hey, can you be part of this team for the next 2 months? And then after that 2 months is over, the congregational care person may say, hey, I need a team of people to do this. You may be able to have the opportunity to try different ministries. So those are the things that I would add to that conversation.
And I was just looking at our list of nominations, and I know this has changed since you gave me that list.
20 times or
But as
so.
I look at that list, I see names on here of people who have not been participating before. And they agreed to be one of the directors. And I think that's one of the values of having the system. It gets people who want to help, but they're not sure how to get started, and you kind of give them a little nudge, and you ask them, and you show them that you are interested in having them, and they'll do it.
All right. All right. Well, thank you all very much. And they've done a lot of talking, so now we kind of want to let you do some talking, and we got a hand up over here.
Yeah, because you're a small church, do you still have limits on how long they can serve, or have you taken that away?
I just wrote that down because I don't think we don't have any formal limits set.
We haven't talked about any limits so new, but that is something as we come to the end of the year to be looking at, asking those questions. So there's no guarantees.
It's like you said, it's still being modified and tweaked. That is one of the things.
Yeah, we've not done that either.
Okay.
We've kind of, is everybody willing to commit again next year, and we give them like a nanosecond to blink? And we're like, good. Drop the gavel, we're good for another year. Obviously, if somebody wanted to drop out, or say they're burned out.
But if somebody wanted to stay on the committee for 5 years, it's okay.
I'm
No
about
guarantees.
4 years in.
We just don't have a set.
A set, yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that it might not be a bad idea.
Yeah.
Because, you always want some kind of new thinking coming on board.
Right.
So it's, it can be good or bad.
I'll read to you what we have. We have a section in our document. We don't really have a name for it yet. The thing that is governing what we're doing. And it says term limits. Each member of the board of directors will meet annually with the pastor to discuss continuation of term. After this discussion, the pastor will make recommendations for each position to the nominations subcommittee, which we still do have nominations. I couldn't get rid of that. It's okay. Who will vote on all board members to be lifted up before the church charge conference. So we have the same thing as with pastors. It's kind of a church itinerant system for laity. And Larry's on it for life.
Can I just mention, related with that, one of the temptations is that the same people who are on the lead team will be electing persons to serve on the lead team or nominating. And so just trying to make sure that we're sensitive enough to say, now are we really doing the best thing by renominating ourselves again? Is there someone else? That's a question that we've got to be asking, because we will be possibly nominating ourselves again, and we want to be careful about that because it doesn't look good and it may not be good.
Is the timekeeper allowed to ask a question?
Absolutely.
But you're on a time limit. We got you on the watch. Oh, sorry, time's up.
This is not a question so much as an observation. This is so exciting because I spend half my time as a church pastor, half my time in the business world. The corporate and business world has been doing this for many, many years, constantly reinventing their organizational models, their corporate mission statements. And I think it's about time the church is doing it, and doing it actively, proactively, and intentionally, because look at how fast the world is changing. Technology, the economy, world events, the stock market, everything's changing so fast. And I'm not saying we have to go faster and faster, but to be able to change and willing to change within the church structure is so important, not only for our growth, but our survival too. And the business world's been doing this for a long time. So it's a good thing, it's a healthy thing. That's all I'm saying.
Well, by the way, Jim, as pastor of Okeana and also a movie star.
Oh,
He's in the movie. What was the movie you were just in here in Cincinnati?
Carol.
Carol?
Carol.
And you played an FBI agent, right?
Well, no, that was the Bruce Willis.
Oh, the Bruce Willis.
That's Marauders.
All right. So he's a man of many trades. Okay.
Yeah, a lot of hats.
Good. Go ahead.
I have a 2-point chart.
Okay.
With probably 2 of the smallest churches in the district.
In the world.
Miamiville averages 22 people a Sunday. Camp Dennison, 12. I have more people listed on our organization chart on our charge conference than I have members. And when I first got there this fall, I went theoretical chairpersons and nominations at each church. We need to sit down and talk about this. And they say, oh, we don't need to do that. Anita always did that. She just spelled out the names. So, at our first ad council meetings this year, I brought up the point of we need to consider modifying our structure. Not knowing much that I was talking about, but I suggested this. I said, we have been operating under a modified board for years. And I found no resistance whatsoever, which I'll let you know next year what that holds. But
Yeah.
Well, to that point, I think in some small churches where you have a person that's a trustee, who's also on your finance, who's also on your staff parish, who's also on your ad council. You've been in a modified structure, you just didn't know it because it wasn't called that. But that, so, yeah.
That was a key for us in, quote, selling this idea, was that in all reality, after all is said and done, it doesn't change that much. It really honestly doesn't change that much. And for us, Batavia is a former EUB church, and the EUB church used to use a structure that looks a lot more like this modified structure before the Methodists came in and became and shifted it to an ad council. So I had a lot of people saying, "Oh, I remember we did this before." So that was a bonus. That was one bonus.
Yes.
How does it get around the discipline? What's in the discipline books as to what committees you're supposed to have and how many people on it and that kind of thing? So how?
The good thing is that the discipline doesn't necessarily restrict us.
Okay.
So paragraph 249 is what you need to get familiar with. And it's in the hand. I tried to make a lot of notes. I've been researching this for a while and adding some of my own personal things. And I put those in the handouts. And if you go to the discipline, paragraph 249, there's a list there of the things, that the people, the positions that you need to have covered. So I tried to note those there. Now that's the great thing about our discipline, because it gives us that leadway. They recognize that every area is going to be a little bit different. Every church, it's like snowflakes, fingerprints, everybody's different. And that's where leadership is so key, because you go in And you have to make sure that form and function are following one another, and the challenge, you do whatever it takes to make disciples. That's kind of my personal motto. For me, that's why I exist, is to do everything, whatever it takes, to get people in right relationship with God. I think that's what the mission is. That's what we're here for. So you don't want to toss the discipline out. That's your authority that you stand on. I've seen this happen. You do that, you get way down the road, and then you get in trouble. And you don't have that to stand on because you've totally tossed it out the window. So you can't do that. But you take those principles and you follow through, but it gives you leadway. I've got some of that listed in the handouts, and I think there's also a couple of churches that have got their principles laid out, and I put those at the back page on the reference page. One of the things that you should know about is you should all use your apportionment money, okay? So one thing that you forget, you're out there and you kind of forget, well, there's all these great videos that the General Board of Discipleship makes, and they're free. Anybody can participate. You get these things all the time. People all across the country have participated in some of these webinars. You just get on there. It's not free, but your apportionments are paying for these things. And they have all these great seminars and folks presenting how to do this. So you can go on to this General Board site. I've got the references here, and they will talk through modified leadership structure. And they've got examples from churches across the country. Their principle, everything. Why reinvent the wheel? You can take that and use it in your context. Some of the things I put in this is why you consider, why even think about a modified leadership structure. And the questions on the webinars, what they boiled it down to is every church really needs to know why they exist. Why are you here? What are you doing? How is God using you? I mean, you need to get that. How do you set direction and allocate your resources is another key question. And then everybody in your church needs to know who's in charge. The facilities, finances, the people, and programs. Some of the webinar talks about those things. I've got a list of the Book of Discipline, paragraph 249. Paragraph 243, the local church shall be organized so that it can pursue its primary task and mission in the context of its own community. Paragraph 244.2, alternative plans may be developed to include nurture, outreach, witness, and administrative. And then another helpful paragraph is paragraph 247.2, the church conference, the district superintendent, and pastor shall organize and administer and modify plans. One of the things the webinar and the folks down at Nashville indicated is it might be helpful to let the district office know if you're getting ready to do this big thing. In a lot of cases, we even do church conferences. Okay?
Tim, do you have extra those?
I can get you those.
Okay.
Yeah, it should have been in the...
in your folder. He didn't get one in his folder.
That's from my folder with one.
Okay.
No, I didn't get
Okay,
it.
we can get those. Yep, no problem.
Tim, could I just,
Sure.
on the bottom of your resource page, flip open your resource page, grab a pen. I don't know if anybody else up here is willing to do this, but I am. I'm going to give you my email address because I had intended to get a copy of our board structure into everybody's hands, but it's been a very busy week. And for those of you who know me, you know what's going on. So my email address is nhendersonjohns, all one word. So NHENDERSONJOHNS@gmail.com. And if you send me an email, I will, as soon as I am physically able to, send you a copy of our board of directors' purpose, responsibility, structure, and members. And I beg, borrow, and steal. That's what we do as pastors, right? We beg, borrow, and steal everybody else's ideas. This came to me in a form called the core leadership team. I modified it to work for my previous context and modified it again to work for. So if you are looking to do this with your congregation, this can be a starting point for you. It's free material, freeware, whatever you want to. And I certainly would be glad to answer any questions beyond what we have today and tell you how I was able to get through. We did a charge conference vote to approve the new structure, and now we're doing the nominations charge conference to vote in the new members. So there's processes in place to do those things. And
Debbie, did you have a question? Can you repeat the email?
Yes,
Your email.
nhendersonjohns@gmail.com.
Different question. You ready for our different question?
Yes.
Okay. I've got a couple actually. When you were talking about your organizations, you also included some leadership training. What can you give us an example of what you might cover in a meeting? Or who you have? You're looking at me? Yeah. I know leadership is a big thing. Leadership training. Well, when a lot of people that are on our team have never been on PPRC, so we would take and a lot of stuff again is in the book of discipline and things. The district has people who has done those trainings that you could call them and ask, who can we do? I know they've had them here before with those trainings, who can come out and do a training for us on what does it mean to be on the PPRC committee? Or what does it mean to be a trustee? What am I responsible for? What does that, what does that mean? And so on and so forth. And again, that's also in the book of discipline. Or you can get somebody from the district that is more familiar with that, perhaps like Bob Highland was, to come out and do that training. So there's that kind of piece of training that goes on. And just in the beginning, then beyond that, you could do some other trainings. We're talking about trying to get if there's an active shooter that comes in our congregation, what do we do? We want to be prepared. You hate to say that, but you don't know. That's right. And so we want to know, as the leadership team, what can we do, and invite the church to come for that. So there's pieces like that can take place. And my other question is, you mentioned that your meetings are open to the congregation, which is great. How many times are you taken up on that?
Not many, but as long as people know that, and when we make the announcement, this is when the meeting is, it's an open meeting, at least the invitation is there, so that there have been people who have dropped in, but hasn't been the whole congregation coming. Though we do plan to have congregational conversations, not meetings, but conversations, in order to help the congregation to be aware of what's going on, what's happening financially, generally. Matter of fact, we're going to be having one following worship on the first Sunday in February to just kind of give a general update of where we are and how we came through last year.
I'd reiterate the same thing. The invitation is there if they choose to participate. It's not a closed meeting unless it's Pastor Parrish. But because of the size of the congregation and everybody knowing the team, they'll usually catch you Sunday morning, as opposed to Monday, making the time to come to a Monday night meeting. We also publish our minutes. They're available to anybody in the congregation.
What is your way of communicating that? We've had different thoughts on that. Nobody can seem to agree. What do you find to be the best way to communicate your minutes?
We publish them, and we literally bought the nice magazine rack looking facility, and we have a place in our narthex that has our mailboxes, and it's our communication center, and people know it's there, and we'll bring it up that Okay, the latest newsletter, the minutes, things of that nature are available, so.
Okay. Primarily hard copy.
Yes, yes.
I have
Can I-
just one more, okay.
Oh.
You go first.
Oh, okay. So have you eliminated things like intentional faith development committee, mission committee? Do those still exist, or?
For us, we have never had an intentional faith development committee. That fell under the worship
Mission,
somehow.
outreach, or-
And
Okay, so here's my
we,
question. So if I'm someone who is passionate about children's education or faith development, I am not passionate about trustees. I am not passionate about, these kind of things. My gift is in this particular area, whether it's missions or whether it's education. How do I fit here?
so for us, it's been, we have a director of each area. So we have a director of intentional faith development. We call it director of discipleship.
Okay.
And that person will be sitting on the board and helping to make the decisions that happen around the table. But her main focus, her heart and her soul and her energy is in making sure we have people in small groups, having small groups available at all times that are needed, making sure people are engaged in leading those small groups. She is 100% all about small groups and discipleship. But she does also participating in making sure that in the happenings of the general church. And if you are a person who is not interested in the administration at all of any of the rest of the stuff, we have a space so that I will say Sally is our director of discipleship. She has the ability to create teams as she needs them or dissolve teams as she needs them without going through nominations process. So she may be a person, you tell the pastor that you're really interested in discipleship, and then I tell Sally that you are like all about discipleship. I say you need to get her involved in this and do this. She then goes to you and partners with you and does that work.
And is Sally on your leadership team?
She is on the leadership team.
So this can have more people on it?
It can have more people on it. In terms of shorter term missions, it can be whatever you want it to
Well,
be, really.
like for outreach or benevolence or mission, where do those fit into this 13? How does that fit into it?
Well, it depends, because our 13 include a mission director. The one that we have
It's not
at
listed on
Batavia.
here. I just don't see how it.
Well,
My outreach
Oh, this is
person.
just an example.
that's an example,
That's just an
yes.
example. So
Yeah.
you can add or take away,
Okay.
Yes.
but you need to, have your core
Uh-huh.
of folks.
The other part of that that I would look at for us, having someone that has a passion in a particular area of ministry, they don't necessarily have to sit on the lead team, but as that is made known, the lead team can say, this is the person who needs to lead this Christian education ministry area, or this person's got a passion there. They can be the person that would coordinate the ministry, say Vacation Bible School, can coordinate that and work with that and then report to someone on the lead team. And they wouldn't necessarily have
But if
to.
that person isn't on the lead team, then that ministry really isn't gonna have a voice.
Yes, it will. It can, because that's how we're set up, so that ministry can take place. And it's not limited to the people who sit around the table to make decisions. So it would have a passion through the pastor or through any of those members that are there, saying this is something that's really good. And that individual also could come to a meeting, give the report, and get input, and then be excused and not have to stay and listen to talk about how many chairs there are or how many, we need to
May I
buy.
say something?
Yes, ma'am.
Also, a person, and we've had this happen, a person that has a passion with something that they enjoyed, maybe just want to do a workshop or just a temporary thing, not an ongoing thing. They just bring it to the lead team and say, this is what I want to do. and then the lead team can approve it, and, you know, and so long as it doesn't conflict with anything else that is on the calendar, then they go ahead with that project. So you don't have to be a part of the lead team if there's something that you would like to do.
Because the focus is on ministry and being conduits or channels through which the Lord operates and works. So we just keep the channel open and the communication going, and it happens.
Okay. We are at the end of our time, and I know that you probably still have questions. On the handout, you'll see at the bottom, the very, very bottom, in the footnote area, I'll put my email address. So you got the district office or the website, orvumc.org. You can go there, find my email as well, or give us a call, and we'll be happy to resource you and help equip you to maybe maneuver through some of these changes. Let's thank our panelists. And let me just share a moment of prayer before we go. God, we thank you for this opportunity. We thank you for all of these congregations that are represented here, and for all the possibility, and especially, Lord, for that opportunity to spread the good news, to be your servant and disciple at this time. And use us, we pray, to be those who would be peacemakers, those that would help us to lead the church so that we might make disciples in the name of Christ. We pray all these things. Amen. Amen. And have a blessed day.